Hey guys, welcome back to Toy Garage. In this episode, let me show you a simple tuning I have done with my revolver replicas. This is again my favorite Airsoft Smith & Wesson Model 327 snub-nose revolver, produced by Tanaka Works. So what exactly I want to do? I want to reduce trigger pull as much as possible. Some airsoft players would like to have a realistic trigger pull, but not for me. Let me explain. In the skirmish-driven airsoft market, revolver is not as popular as a semi-auto. Therefore, there is no high-end aftermarket parts available, especially for the internal parts. And in the same time, the stock internal parts are most likely made of zinc alloy, which is rather a kind of pot metal. And in addition, I love to dry fire. Therefore, reducing trigger pull means reduce the loading of each internal parts, and so maximize the durability of the replica. That's why I want to reduce the trigger pull as much as possible. First, let me list out what built up the trigger pull of this replica. The first one is the hammer spring, of course. For this Hamstring model, the hammer spring is a piece of steel melee spring that located within the grip. The hardness of this spring is adjustable the same way as the real steel. The second one is the rebound trigger spring. It is used to push the trigger back to the original position after firing an ammo, like this. The spring is a coil spring, small but hard. I do feel the hardness is definitely more than enough. The first source is the resistance coming from the cylinder. When pulling the trigger, you are pulling the hammer as well as the moving the cylinder. Therefore, the total weight of the cylinder assembly will definitely apply a certain amount of resistance to the trigger pull. I don't think I can do anything with it, but for this airsoft, there is another feature which will introduce friction to the cylinder movement, and I'm going to improve it. Lastly, the friction among the all related internal parts. For an airsoft, because the parts are mainly made of zinc alloy and they will break in a short period, and I think it is not necessary to do extra work to handle them. Now let me tell you what I have done with the hammer spring. In this picture, the left side shows the internal of the Tanaka replica, while the right one is the exploder wheel. Part number 48 is a screw used to adjust the hardness of the hammer spring. According to my personal preference, I set the spring as light as possible, provided that it can open the gas release valve and release enough amount of gas to shoot the baby pellet. For this 2-inch barrel model, I think tiny amount of gas is enough. Turn the screw counterclockwise will reduce the hardness of the hammer. For the rebound trigger spring, on the right of this picture, part number 61 is the rebound trigger spring, which is stored within a housing, part number 60. This picture shows the cut spring. The original length is about 26 mm. I have cut about 3 mm away. But I need to tell you, do it on your own risk. Cutting the spring is, of course, irreversible. Maybe you can check this out to help making the decision. First, remove the cylinder and the crank and open the lid on the left side. Take the hammer out, take the hammer spring out, close the lid, and then try your trigger. In this case, the major resistance of the trigger is coming from the rebound trigger spring. Feel the hardness and think of if it is good to make it lighter. Second, the hardness of the spring will affect the speed of the rebound of the trigger. Cutting the spring will make the trigger rebound in a slower speed. Is this acceptable? Lastly, the trigger rebound movement will definitely under some friction. Overcutting is possible to cause failure of the trigger rebound. Now let's check the friction of the cylinder. As I mentioned, there is a feature in this replica that will introduce a certain amount of friction while the cylinder is moving. For real steel, the front part of the cylinder and the end of the barrel, they are not touching with each other. But for this Tanaka replica, the end of the barrel is rubber shielded, and the rubber ring is touching and pushing against the front face of the cylinder, and therefore introduce friction while it is moving. To test if it really happened, simply lose the dummy ejection rod, this one, by rotating it counterclockwise, maybe by a half to a one circle, and afterward put the cylinder back and feel if there is any different with the resistance of the trigger pull. If you feel the difference, we can continue. What I'm going to do is move the cylinder backward by inserting a thin washer between the crank and the cylinder assembly, and therefore make it push less hard against the rubber ring at the end of the barrel. As shown in this exploded wheel, I have added a thin washer between the crank and the cylinder, corresponding to part number 27 and 26 in this wheel. They are to be held together by the dummy ejection rod part number 28. This picture shows the washer that I used. The thickness is about 0.3 millimeter. External diameter is about 6 millimeter, and internal diameter is about 3 millimeter. Therefore, the cylinder is moving back by the thickness of the washer, 0.3 millimeter. Now let's check the timing of the cylinder. That means to check if the firing chamber can sit on the same ball of the barrel while cocking the hammer in a very slow speed. You will hear a click sound if it is successful. Let's do it. Yeah, do you hear the click sound? Let's check all the chambers. Yes. 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 The click sound is here clearly, which means the chamber is successfully moved to the correct position for each time. I think the issue is almost eliminated, even though I clock the hammer very slowly. Trick tuning is so funny. That's the end of this video. If you like this video, please subscribe, share the video, and hit the like button. Really appreciate for your support. Stay tuned and bye bye.